when the United States determines that you're not in our national interests, we will abandon you. And this has been displayed. We aren't just looking at American defeat in the Middle East. We're looking at the loss of American prestige globally, and this will resonate. And I'm sure you'll probably be asking about it, but America is in the process of redefining its relationship with Europe. I don't know what kind of NATO you thought you were joining, but it's not going to be the NATO that exists, for instance, by the end of the summer. NATO only works if America is behind it 100%. With all due respect to the Swedes, the Germans, the French, the British, you have no military capability whatsoever, zero.
Well, I have to say though, you're showing a lot more respect to us as Swedish more than our government did when they went over our heads and pressed us into NATO, pressed us into the defense cooperation agreement. So they have no respect whatsoever to us, and this is their choice, not ours.
Right, and I recognize that, but hopefully, democracy or democratic values will prevail, and at some point in time, the Swedish people can hold to account those who made these decisions, because these are fundamentally dangerous decisions. They weaken Sweden politically, economically, and militarily. NATO is not, the bastion of strength that maybe people thought it was. NATO is a trap, and what's happening in Iran and how that manifests itself globally, I think, proves this point.
And we'll come back to the situation with Sweden and Europe in just a few moments, but I'm quite curious, how long do you think the US will keep up the war with Iran, considering, as you said, the armaments are running low? And I also read about a CIA report today that was posted by the Washington Post that said that Iran would be able to hold out against the blockade for, I think it was 3 to 4 months. So how long do you think America will keep up with the war for such a long time?
No, I mean, there's a reason why we sought a ceasefire at the end of 39 days of conflict, and that's because we had run out of precision strike munitions and we'd run out of ballistic missile intercept capabilities. The other thing was the realization that our air campaign had accomplished nothing in terms of deterrence or of reducing the threat posed by Iranian drones and missiles. The Iranians were able to continuously fire missiles with great effect against American military installations in the region, against our Gulf Arab allies, and against Israel. And we recognize that if this continued, Iran would be capable of doing a tremendous amount of additional damage. But perhaps more critically, is we weren't prepared for the economic consequences of this conflict. I think we overemphasized regime change and forgot that Iran has the ability to interdict and control the flow of shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe some people thought that the U.S. military would be able to take control of the Strait of Hormuz. That turned out to be a fallacy. And when the Middle East provides 22% of the world's energy resources. If you take away 22% of a building's structural support, the building will collapse. When you remove 22% of energy from the global energy market, you're going to have a global energy-related economic collapse. And that impacts everybody, including the United States. And when we speak of the United States, we also have to factor in a lesson that Bill Clinton taught everybody back in 1992 when he was running for president. A little yellow sticky on his door said, "It's the economy, stupid," meaning don't try to explain anything else to the American people. The only thing they care about at the end of the day is what's in their wallet, what's in their bank account, and what they can buy their kids for Christmas. It's the economy, stupid. And Donald Trump put the American economy at risk. Higher gas prices wake Americans up quicker than murdering 165 Iranian school kids. We don't care about dead children. We care about the price that we pay at the pump. And this was the critical mistake made by this president, was not recognizing the impact that this war on Iran would have on the global economy. And I would also just say this, that after the Washington Post published the leaked CIA report, Foreign Minister Araghchi came out and said they got the number wrong. It's not 75%, it's 120%. reflecting the reality that in the intervening time, Iran continues to produce missiles, that we didn't stop their missile production capability, and that Iran has not only replaced the missiles that they fired during the 39-day war, but they have built new missiles. So Iran's missile capability today is 120% of that which they started the war, and they've gotten stronger while we've gotten weaker.
Mhm. And when the US leaves this war, whether in defeat or for some way victorious, I don't know how that will take place. Do you think the American next step will be? Will they lick their wounds, become more isolationist, or will they turn to another conflict? I've been hearing once again talk about annexing Greenland. We're hearing war rumblings against China over Taiwan, and we also hear talk about Cuba. Do you think there will be another conflict that the US would be able to conduct a new war campaign against another country?
Well, I think the lesson here is there are limits to American power, and Iran has proven that. Um, we also are learning that when one considers warfare today, you have to factor in more than just the military equation. You have to factor in geopolitical factors. You have to factor in economic factors. This means the United States will not be picking a fight with China. The Chinese have better missiles than the Iranians, and they have a stronger economy than the Iranians. And we would lose that conflict as well. So I don't think we're going to be looking for a fight with China. Um, Cuba, we may try to pull a Venezuela on Cuba, meaning a quick, operation designed to, degrade their leadership. But we're not going to invade Cuba because if the Cubans put up a fight, we could very well be defeated by the Cuban. Greenland, that's the lowest hanging fruit. What happens to a bully when they get embarrassed in the schoolyard? They either leave the schoolyard or they go find a weaker person to bully. And right now, I would say that of the scenarios you put out there, the most likely is that the United States will make a move on Greenland because there's literally nothing Europe can do to stop us.
But keeping up with the trace of Greenland here, do you think there might be a more build-up with the American military presence in Europe, considering they have so many military bases here? Or do you think that the Americans will start, as Trump has hinted at, to withdraw from Europe, from Germany, from Spain, from Italy, and maybe even from Sweden? Or do you think if they want to take Greenland that they will expand their presence instead?
You're trying to apply rational thinking when talking about the policies of President Trump. I've advised people um, that I'm somebody who's spent a lifetime doing predictive analysis in a geopolitical and a military, perspective, and I know how to do it. I know what to look for. But when we talk about the Trump administration, we have to change every way that we look at defining a problem and assessing a problem, because we're not talking about a functioning national security apparatus that makes decisions. With Donald Trump, he's a cult of personality. He is a cult of one. And he, is a narcissist who, has explosive mood swings. You can just track his social media postings to understand this. So I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know what's going to happen because Donald Trump doesn't know what's going to happen. It changes by the moment. But what I can say is that Donald Trump is a vindictive man, and right now he feels that he has been insulted by our erstwhile European allies. That they didn't come running to our defense when we asked them to run to help us in the Middle East. I think he forgot that we didn't tell them about it up front, and maybe they didn't run because they don't understand what's going on. But he is made it a point to talk about relocating 5,000 troops that are currently allocated to Germany. He's talked about reducing or eliminating America's military presence in Italy and in Spain. And I think this matches the overall strategic posture of the United States, which is to try to extract ourselves from expensive military-based relationships in the Middle East and in Europe, um, and pivot to the Western Hemisphere and pivot to the Pacific. Um, and so, no matter what happens, we're going to be reducing our footprint in Europe. Um,
mm,
I I think there's a couple things. One, Trump wants to leave Europe. He doesn't like Europe. He doesn't view you as good allies. And two, I think Europe's recognizing that
mm,
they can't wait for the United States to grow up to behave responsibly. That Europe needs to take responsibility for its own security, and the longer you pretend America is going to be there, the longer you remain weak. Because literally, Europe, as I said before, you have zero capacity to defend yourself. None. You may fool yourselves into thinking you can, but you don't. You don't have unified command and control. You have zero logistics sustainability. Um, when was the last time Europe on its own did a major military exercise? You can't do it without the United States. You need us to be there. We're the ones who, built these structures around which these things took place. And so I think there, and also from a defense industrial standpoint, I know Sweden has its own defense industries that it's very proud of, but at the end of the day, Europe buys a lot of weapons from the United States, and I think Europe's recognizing that if you're truly going to be independent from a security standpoint, you need to have an independent defense industry that simply doesn't exist today. So there's a lot of things that have to happen. I would also recommend, although I don't think anybody in Europe's listening to me, that Europe understand that there is no threat worthy of the kind of militarization that Europe is talking about undertaking. Russia poses no threat to Europe unless Europe poses a threat to Russia.
mm,
That the Ukraine situation is literally containable to Ukraine, that Russia's not seeking to expand. But I think that there are, economic and political elites that are using the concept of conflict with Russia to empower themselves, because money is everything. And if once you start talking about remilitarization, you're talking about the allocation of hundreds of billions of euros of money, and the people that control how that money's spent become politically viable and relevant. So I think people are seeking to build political careers on the back of a hyped up threat of Russia
mm.
that doesn't exist. And frankly speaking, I don't think you have the economies that are capable of sustaining the military buildup you're planning on. I think they're from Top Gun movie back in 1986. Your mouth is writing checks your body can't cash.
Mm. And keeping up with the issue of rearmaments, we're not only rebuilding our militaries, our military strength, but there's also talk about something much, much more dangerous: nuclear armaments. Here in Sweden, we have politicians talking about the need to place NATO nuclear missiles on Swedish territory. There is talk between the Swedish and the French government to have French nuclear weapons on Swedish territory. And also this defense cooperation agreement that handed over these 17 bases to America. There's nothing that prohibits America from placing nuclear weapons on these bases. The only thing that the politicians say are that they believe the Americans will respect the Swedish sovereignty, but they have no way of controlling it. And what would the consequences be if they start to escalate the nuclear armaments in Europe, and also if they started placing nuclear weapons in Sweden?
I mean, the consequences will be fatal. Sweden, there was a time before you joined NATO where if there was a Russian NATO conflict, you could have stayed out of it and your people could live. What you're guaranteeing is that you will all die
Mm,
because you're not going to win a nuclear war. I mean, it's the ultimate, you know, concept of stupidity to think that nuclear weapons make you safe. It's the dumbest thing Sweden has ever done because it guarantees that if there is a conflict, you will die. If you think Russia is going to wait around and let you use French nuclear weapons from your soil against Russia, you're wrong. Russia will preemptively strike the totality of the bases where nuclear threats exist with nuclear weapons, and that's the end of it. Now you can say, well, Russia might die too. Does that really matter as a Swede? Do you
mm,
care who else dies?
mm,
The answer is you're going to be dead. and
Mm,
it's a 100% guarantee that you're going to die. So this is stupidity personified.
mm,
Anybody thinking that nuclear weapons provide strength, um, should be institutionalized in an insane asylum.
mm. The mentality you just mentioned that even if a lot of Swedes die, a lot of Russians will die as well. It sounds a lot like that Operation Samson, the Samson option in Israel. That if Israel's existence is under threat, they will just fire or release several nuclear missiles against the main capitals all around the world to take as many with them as possible. Do you think there might be a risk of a nuclear war either in Iran, because of Iran, with a pressured United States and Israel being more pressured and both being nuclear nations, and also with escalation in Europe because of Ukraine and the build-up against Russia? Do you think there's any risk of a nuclear war in either of these areas?
Of course, there's a risk. Anytime you have nations that possess nuclear weapons engaged in conflict, um, there's a real risk. Um, Unfortunately, we have people who say, "Well, we built these weapons, and we should be prepared to use these weapons. If not, then why did we build them to begin with?" Again, one of the fallacies attached to nuclear weapons that they make us safer. They don't. They actually put us all at risk. Um, but there's always a risk. I will say this. I'm loath to, I don't speak on behalf of any nation or group of people. I'm just an analyst. Um, Russia has made it clear that it will not be the first nation to use nuclear weapons.
Mm,
So why Sweden thinks they'll have security having nuclear weapons is beyond me.
mm,
But Russia has made it clear that they're not going to sit back and let the United States or any other nation use nuclear weapons, and then create an environment of intimidation. For instance, if the United States used nuclear weapons against Iran, first of all, Iran is a strategic partner, a strategic ally of Russia. So it's more than just using nuclear weapons against Iran. You're using nuclear weapons against Russia and Chinese global security alliance structures. Um, but now, what Russia can't allow is that the United States said, "Oh, we use nuclear weapons there. We could use them against you too."
mm,
Um, there are many very influential Russian strategic analysts who say that if the U.S. uses nuclear weapons against Iran, it's inevitable that Russia will use nuclear weapons against Europe preemptively, just a
mm,
demonstration weapon. And right now, there's many in Russia today who say that this should happen no matter what, that the British are building missiles, giving them to Ukraine to strike strategic targets, that Poland is facilitating this. And the gamble is that the United States won't risk trading Boston for Poznan, meaning blow up a Polish city with a nuclear weapon to tell Europe, we will kill all of you if you don't stop what you're doing, and the United States won't do anything. But the real question is, will France sacrifice Paris for Poznan? Will England sacrifice London for Poznan? These are the questions you have to ask yourself. Do you
mm,
have security with a French weapon? France understands that in a blink of an eye, all of France will be gone,
mm.
totally annihilated. Are they going to risk that for Sweden?
Yeah, for Stockholm or Gothenburg or Malmö or other cities.
So the answer, I believe, is no.
Mm,
So all you're doing is setting yourself up to create a situation where Russia feels the necessity to use nuclear weapons preemptively,
mm,
um, and they may get away with it. So why do we even want to have this conversation?
mm,
I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation, for instance, if Sweden had stayed out of NATO. But you decided to join NATO, and now we're having this conversation. Um, we wouldn't have this conversation if the CIA hadn't been, weaponizing Western Ukrainian nationalism since 1948 to take down the Soviet Union and Russia, because that's what's happening in Ukraine. Russia didn't invade Ukraine. Uh, the CIA invaded Ukraine and took over Ukraine. We know it now. Tony Blinken just admitted it. Did you see what Tony Blinken admitted? We admitted that we were setting the Ukrainians up to make a military move on the Donbass in 2021. When the Russians said that, everyone went, that's a lie. It's not a lie.
mm,
Ukraine was getting ready to invade the Donbass. The United States was facilitating this invasion. And so was Europe, so was NATO. And the Russians acted preemptively as they're allowed to under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. Um, these are conflicts that could be avoided, and all conflicts can be avoided if people behave rationally. But I think right now Europe has been infected with the disease of irrationality.
Mm. Yeah, I'm afraid I have to agree with you on that point, Mr. Ritter. Um, will turn to another area that I really want to hear your opinion on, and that is the issue of Israel. But before we do that, I just want to inform our viewers that the Frihetsnytt is mainly a Swedish newspaper, but we have an English translation of our entire webpage, so you can read all the articles in both Swedish and English. And if you want to read the premium articles, we have a subscription service. So if you want to support what we're doing and be able to read everything that we have on our webpage and following what's happening in Sweden and all across the world with our take on it, then feel free, please, and become a subscriber today. Just click on the link down below in the description and you'll get all the information you need to become a subscriber. And back to you, Mr. Ritter. Looking now at the war with Iran, another completely new focus that I had never seen before has fallen on Israel, on Israeli influence over the United States policies and geopolitical actions. We had a slip of the tongue by Marco Rubio a couple, say 1 or 2 months ago, about Israel being preparing the war against Iran, so the US had to strike preemptively. And we see a lot more critics exposing and talking openly about the Israeli lobby. Would you say that this war with Iran could end, or how could it affect the relationship between the US and Israel?
Well, we already know that the relationship is on rocky ground. Recent polling shows that 60% of Americans are opposed to Israel. Um, that's a huge number. And the more the truth comes out about the role that pro-Israeli lobbyists play in shaping American national security policy, the angrier Americans are going to get. Um, and I think the war in Iran will definitely be one that breaks the back, so to speak, of the pro-Israeli lobby in the United States. This was a war that was foisted on us by Israel. They wanted this war, and unfortunately, the American people elected a president who surrounded himself with pro-Israeli cabinet members who helped facilitate Israel getting what it wanted. American involvement. But this is an Israeli war. It's not an American war. But it's the American people who are going to pay the price. And as I said, it's the economy, stupid. Um, you know, you could have again, look at the genocide in Gaza, and it has been recognized as genocide. Um, did that move the needle in the American public? A little bit, but not much, because frankly speaking, we don't care about dead Palestinian children. Some people cry about it, some people post about it, I'll write about it, but fundamentally, the American people don't care because it doesn't impact their daily lives. I mean, we've been murdering millions of people around the world for decades, and the American people don't cry anything. But you hurt our pocketbook, and we care. And this war is hurting the American pocketbook, and we're looking for somebody to blame. And Israel um, is positioned to, have the finger of guilt pointed at them. So yes, I see a fundamental change taking place in the United States about our long-term relationship with Israel, and I think it's only going to get weaker.
Mm,
Israel's in trouble. The global community is turning against them as well. They're recognized as a genocidal entity. The legitimacy of Greater Israel is recognized by nobody, and the behavior of the Israelis is repugnant. I think the Europeans are more capable of expressing genuine moral outrage, and I do believe that Europe is morally outraged by what Israel has done. But I also believe the Europeans have a corollary to Bill Clinton's mantra. It's the economy, stupid. Your economies are about to crash.
mm,
You're going to have energy crises, and like anybody, you're going to be asking the question, how did this happen? Why did this happen?
mm,
And when it becomes apparent that it happened because of a war of choice that Israel, pushed on the United States and the world, I think Europe will increasingly turn against Israel as well.
But I have to ask you though, how much control do you think Israel have over Donald Trump? Because we know he surrounds himself with people like Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff. He has direct contact with Netanyahu, but also he has made some decisions that seem to have taken Israel off guard, like the ceasefire agreement a couple of days ago. That while Israel was preparing to escalate things, suddenly there came a ceasefire agreement, and it seems like the US is not really playing tag the way Israel wants. Or do you have another opinion on that?
Well, I've always said that that Israel, it's not that Israel controls the United States. It's that the pro-Israeli lobby in the United States uses Israel to achieve political control. Um, so it's a more complicated puppeteer, so to speak. And what that means is if you're an American using Israel and the Israeli issues to empower yourself politically in the United States, um, you have to be aware of American domestic political reality.
Mm.
Um, and you can't allow Israel, the actual Israel, to drive a narrative that um, hurts you politically. Right now, the pro-Israeli lobby is in a panic because in November, there's a good chance that the Democrats are going to take control of the House in the United States Congress, and they could take control of the Senate. This is going to put the presidency of Donald Trump at risk. And all of those people, those pro-Israeli people who attach themselves to this presidency will likewise be at risk. And so there's going to be a lot of rats jumping the ship, so to speak, in the not too distant future. And you're going to be seeing a redefinition of what our relationship with Israel will be going forward.
Mhm. And now we're going to turn to this final phase of this interview, and it's will connect to your personal experience with being persecuted for your opinions. But how is the American public reacting to the war? You've told us a lot about it, about the dissatisfaction that's taking place because of hitting the wallet. But how people treated when they talk out against the war? When because here in Europe, for example, if you criticize the war in Ukraine, you become called a Putinist, a Vatnik, a pro-Russian agent, or if you criticize Israel, you are branded as an anti-Semite. How is the debate going on in the United States? Are people called things like that, or are they even persecuted by the authorities for speaking out?
Well, first of all, the name calling is alive and well and living in the United States. I think we've perfected the art because sadly nobody wants to talk about the substance of the issues. Um, I'm a longtime Russian specialist. I've been studying the Soviet Union, Russia for my entire adult life. Um, so I'm prepared to have an intellectual conversation, fact-based with anybody, anytime, anywhere. But they don't want that conversation because they'll lose that conversation. So instead, they'll call me names, and I don't care. I got big shoulders. I've been called worse. I went to Marine Corps boot camp. I've been called everything possible to be called. You can't insult me. But name calling is one thing. But when you weaponize, the powers of government against people who vocalize dissent, um, you not only insult the Constitution, the First Amendment rights, but you also you have a chilling impact on debate. The best ideas aren't born in a vacuum. The best ideas come from percolating through the process of debate, dialogue, discussion, pushback, challenging. If I say something, you push back, challenge, you force me to think and respond. Therefore, I strengthen the foundation of fact upon which I'm, building my argument. When the government sent 40 FBI agents to my home, um, they were sending a message to everybody who dared speak out against American policy. There, but for the grace of God goes you. And most people don't want 40 FBI agents going through their house and facing the potential of a long, drawn-out court fight, which will bankrupt you. And because the U.S. government can manipulate the law any way it wants, potential jail time, prison time. Nobody wants that. And so, they picked the wrong person to pick on. They picked a Marine, doesn't retreat, doesn't surrender, and fights back. And so far, um, you know, they seem to have cooled their heels when it comes to me. But we know in the past that they have arrested people on freedom of speech issues, and the Uhura Four were arrested, charged, convicted of Foreign Agent Registration Act laws. They tried to label me an agent of Russia. I think after they seized all of my electronics, they realized that that's the furthest thing from the truth, that I'm an independent actor. But it doesn't matter what the truth is. You say you get called Putin's puppet. What does that mean? That means you're an agent of Russia. So now you're in the business of reporting news, providing analysis. The best way to silence you is just to get people to not view you as being serious, to call you Putin's puppet or something of this nature. And it's very effective. It is very effective to be when you put labels on people. Um, it does have it causes a certain segment of society to tune you out, and it's a long, hard fight to get them to tune back in. I've been lucky because I mean, history has proven me right in very big ways, dating back to Iraq, when I said there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I was attacked. I was vilified. I mean, the government threatened to destroy my life, and they tried their best to destroy my life. But the one thing nobody can say today is that I was wrong about Iraq, and that's a solid foundation of righteousness upon which to pursue. And I've been accurate in other assessments as well. So I think my history, my resume, as you said, helps shield me against the forces that are trying to silence me. But it's very difficult. It's very, very hard to speak out in America today because of the manner in which people strike back. We used to respect freedom of speech. We used to respect differing opinions. Today, the moment you speak out against bad policy, you're called a traitor. And like I said, that doesn't promote more dialogue. It actually constrains it.
Mhm. And do you think, as a final question, do you think things will get worse, or do you think they will loosen up this upcoming time, or do you think it will be everyone who speaks out will be face more persecution?
Sadly, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. When 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 you have systemic failures like you have here in the United States, they don't self-correct. You generally have to hit rock bottom and then start over. Um, the system today is fundamentally broken, and one of the reasons why it's broken is that the American people don't even understand who they're supposed to be. We are a constitutional republic, populated by a people who haven't read the Constitution. If the Constitution provides the body of laws, the rule of law that defines who and what you are, can you defend that? How can you define yourself if you're ignorant of what the Constitution is? Um, and so to salvage America, we're going to have a great awakening. And again, I believe that can only happen when we hit rock bottom. And unfortunately, that seems to be the direction we're going.
Mm. Thank you very much, Mr. Ritter, for being with us here today and sharing your opinion, your experience, and your knowledge about what's going on right now. Do you have any final message to our audience, mostly probably Swedes, but also maybe non-English speaking, non-Swedes watching this?
Um, Keep an open mind. I mean, my mission for the last couple of years has been to confront Russophobia here in the United States, because the Russophobia is a disease of the mind, and it creates a situation where we promote aggressive policies against Russia. And I do this by traveling to Russia, meeting with Russians, seeing Russia firsthand, trying to capture the Russian reality and bring it back to the American people, to provide an antidote to the disease of Russophobia. That's the best way to go about attacking any problem. If the Swedes have a problem with Russia, go to Russia, travel to Russia, visit Russia, see it firsthand. If you have a problem with America, come to America, see it firsthand. Um, Knowledge is power, and that's why I salute what you're doing because you are a vehicle of knowledge that people should tap into. But don't trust anybody or anything. See for yourself. The best computer is a computer between this earlobe and this earlobe.
Yes.